Yes. So now we are going to discuss about concept number 7, how to pass the journal entry. We know that every business transaction for the first time it will be recorded in a book called as journal. And we record the transactions in a systematic order, in a particular order, in a particular format. So let us first try to understand the which one format of journal. So totally 5 columns are going to be there in journal. First one is called as date, that is date of transaction, when that particular business transaction has taken place. The date on which the transaction is occurred, that date we are going to write, that is date of transaction. Next, particulars, where we are going to pass the journal entry. Next, ledger folio. Folio means page number of the ledger. This particular transaction will be transferred to one more book, next book, that is called as ledger. For the first time, every transaction will come to journal. From journal, it will be transferred to the ledger, the second book. So in which page number we have recorded this transaction? In the ledger. That is going to be written in the LF column, ledger folio column. Suppose if it is transferred to page number 40 of the ledger, then we write here page number 40. Then we have two columns, debit amount, credit amount, two columns, one to record debit amount and one to record credit amount. So totally 5 columns are there. Date, particulars, ledger folio, debit and credit. Let us just take an example of any one particular business transaction to understand the journal entry. Assume that on 10th April, we have paid salary in cash. We paid salary to our employees. That's a 12,000 rupees paid in cash. Then the journal entry will be salary account debit to cash account. So salary account debit 12,000 rupees. The first line is called as debit line. In this journal, whatever this first line is there, this is called as debit line. And here DR means debit recorded. And CR means credit recorded. So we are going to record debit as well as credit. So salary account debit, this first line is going to be called as debit line. Now when you are going to record the credit, first you need to leave some space. Leave some space, then we start with 2. Whenever we record the credit, first we are going to start with a word called as to cash. This second line is going to be called as credit line. So in the journal, you have two aspects. One is debit, one is credit. This is debit line, this is credit line. Yes. How this journal entry came, that we are going to see later on. How this particular journal entry came, that we are going to see later on. Just I am telling one example, format, to explain the format. So whenever I say that this particular account should be debited, it means you should write in the first line. When I say it should be credited, then you should write in the second line. Now below this journal entry, we are going to write narration. Narration means a short explanation of the business transaction. Whatever this journal entry we have passed, we give a short explanation of this. Because many a times what will happen, even if the business transaction is different, the journal entry is going to look similar. Let's say there are 4 different types of business transactions are there. But in all the 4 business transaction, let us say journal entry looks similar. Same kind of entry or similar kind of entry it is going to look like. So to avoid that confusion, for which particular transaction, which entry it is, to avoid that confusion, what we do, we write a short explanation of that particular transaction. So narration means a short explanation of business transaction written under each journal entry. And whenever we write the narration, we start with a word called as being. we start with a word called as being. Being salary paid in cash, being goods sold for cash, being goods purchased for cash, being electric charges paid, being amount paid to creators, supplier of the goods. So whenever we write narration, we start with a word called as being. So what is the format of journal entry? Totally 5 columns. First column is going to be called as date. Next one is called as particulars, where we are going to write journal entry, and below each journal entry we are going to write the narration. Ledger folio, page number of the ledger, debit and credit, debit amount and credit amount.